I've been asked by one of the comments in another video to demonstrate how to get 5 to 8 marks on the essay questions on the GCSE OCR Computer Science Paper 1. So I'm going to start with the 2023 paper, which I've done a separate walkthrough video for the rest of the paper. But I usually get to the essay questions, add a couple of post-it notes and tell you how to approach it and then move on. Otherwise these videos will be like an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. So I've decided just to do a very quick, maybe 15-minute video walking and talking through the question on last year, 2023, paper 1, the essay question. Now, this question has got an asterisk next to it, and if you refer to the front of the paper one more time, you will see, let me just zoom in on this, there we go. You'll see that it says the quality of extended response will be assessed in questions marked with an asterisk. Now what that means is that on every other question you can answer in bullet point format. You don't necessarily have to write incoherent extended sentences, but on this question you have no choice. You must answer in extended continuous writing, the same way that you would perhaps for an English or history essay question. Okay, so the question is presented as: a shopping centre has a security system that includes CCTV cameras to record activities in the centre. Not unusual, we're all used to this by now. The security system is being upgraded to include the use of facial recognition to identify, track the movements of and record individuals throughout the shopping centre. So the key thing there is that CCTV already exists, but they're upgrading their camera system. So talking about CCTV on its own would be a little bit of a waste of time, because that's not the issue. The issue is that they're upgrading to include the use of facial recognition. Okay. So they're trying to identify people. Now, we need to discuss the positive and negative impacts of this upgrade, including ethical issues, privacy issues, and legal issues. So I'm going to go to my trusted post-it notes again. There's a reason I do this. Obviously, I realise you don't have these in the exam, so please forgive me. What I would suggest is that you maybe flip the page to one of those additional answer spaces and you plan your essay there. But I've got post-it notes here. I'm not doing the real exam, so I'm going to do it this way. So 3 different colour post-it notes. One, I could mention the ethical issues that we could talk about. So the shoppers might feel safer knowing that the centre take security and safety so seriously. Okay, that would be my first point that I would make about maybe an ethical issue. Now, I also teach the A-level spec, and in the A-level there's another law that we have to look at called the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act. And I usually start my lesson on that topic with a quote that if you've done nothing wrong, then you have nothing to hide, kind of thing. Now, not quite the same point here, but I would say if shoppers are not committing crimes, then they should have nothing to fear or hide. So basically saying that it doesn't really affect them. If they're just walking about the shopping centre, buying things, leaving, it shouldn't really affect them in theory. It's the kind of thing that maybe somebody that's a little bit older would say. but not necessarily aware of what goes on with some of this surveillance data and footage nowadays. Now, obviously, there are some negative sides to this. So users of the centre may feel, so it's about how they feel, uncomfortable being tracked. Now, it's a bit different walking in through an entrance of a shopping centre and knowing that a CCTV camera is going to be recording you. If you know that in 3 seconds' time, you're going to be past the camera and you're not going to be recorded anymore. Some people hate being on camera. You know, some people wouldn't make a YouTube video like this, for example, because they don't like the sound of their own voice. We've all been there. I've just got over it. Now, users may be unaware that they're being recorded as well. So that's really, really important. I'm going to put down here in yellow, the centre need to inform shoppers very clearly. So they're going to need to put signs up. Obviously, putting up one sign wouldn't be enough. So signs plural. Allow people to make a choice. Because if you don't like the idea of that, then you can turn around and find another shopping centre, can't you? So, yeah, people need to know that they're going to be recorded. Okay. And this is about consent, really, isn't it? Okay. We're also going to need to think about Data Protection Act. Now, these questions, it's always good to quote a law or refer to a law. And if you're confident, include the year of the law as well. Go with the most recent year, because the Data Protection Act originally was announced in 1998, but it went through a review 20 years later because the use of data had changed so dramatically with the adoption of the internet. Now, if we think about privacy issues, I'm going to put those on the pink post-it note. So shoppers may feel as though their privacy is being disrespected or invaded, or whatever you want to say. But I would also argue to that, it's a public place. Okay, you kind of don't have the right to privacy if you're in a public place. You know, for example, if you're walking around your home in just your underwear, that might be because you feel entirely comfortable in your home. Now, if somebody's peeking through your window, maybe the postman's trying to deliver a parcel and they're peeking through the window, you're going to feel as if your privacy has been invaded because someone's looking through your window and catching you in a state of minor undress. You wouldn't go outside to take the bins out in your underwear if you didn't want people to see you. It's just common sense. It's just obvious. And this is where I sometimes feel that people are a little bit oversensitive about some of these things. Just my opinion. But if they feel that their privacy is being disrespected, they need to remember also, you know, realistically, they're in a public place. So your right to privacy is a lot lower than it would be in your own bedroom or front room or dining room, for example. So public place, so recording is commonplace and entirely legal. Again, it's not like someone's putting a camera phone up to your bedroom window or recording you with a drone. So people may feel, let's go back to people's feelings again, as though they are being watched all of the time. We could also say consent or permission again. Regarding, I'm not going to fit that in, the tracking element. Now, again, I'm fairly relaxed about these things because when I walk into a shopping centre, I'm not going in there with any bad intentions. I already have a Nectar card for Sainsbury's. I have a club card for Tesco's. And I know that these shops track my behaviour in terms of shopping behaviour. So all that they're potentially going to be using this extra information for is looking at your browsing behaviour, you know, shops that you go in that maybe you don't buy anything. And what really can a company do with that puts my privacy and my my own personal preferences at risk? You know, am I going in some questionable shops? As a 39-year-old man, it'd be a bit questionable if I walk into Victoria's Secret on my own. Are they tracking me? Are they making judgments on me for going in there? Obviously, if I went into Victoria's Secret with a lady friend, then people are probably going to judge me a little bit less. So it's one of those where, again, we have to understand that everybody has a different view on these things. We don't have to agree with it. We just have to show that we understand how people might feel with this potential upgrade at this shopping centre. Okay, and I'm just going to make it really, really, really clear down here. Do shoppers know about the upgrade? Have the centre explained why? Maybe like a brochure or a leaflet or something like that could be produced. Okay, so there we go. Shoppers might feel safer knowing that the centre takes security and safety so seriously. If shoppers are not committing crimes, then they should have nothing to fear or hide. But on the flip side of that, they might also feel uncomfortable being tracked. It's important to try and give positive and negative viewpoints when you make a point. Shoppers might feel that their privacy is being disrespected, but then again, they're in a public place, so they have to be realistic about these things. CCTV is quite normal now. People may feel as though they're being watched all the time. Consent or permission regarding the tracking equipment should be given. Okay, because obviously that's data, you know, when you're being recorded, that's data. So that would come under the Data Protection Act, which is the next point. The centre will need to inform shoppers very clearly with signs allowing people to make a choice to turn around and walk away. That essentially is their consent. If they've read a sign and they've still walked in spite of the sign, you could say that that's them giving their consent, or, you know, they agree reluctantly. Quote the Data Protection Act, what they're going to do with the data. Do shoppers know about the upgrades? Have the centre explained why they're doing it? Maybe a brochure or a leaflet could be used. Okay, so your job really is to put those things into an answer that is going to get you the most marks. So let me just move those post-it notes for a second. Now, obviously, like I said at the start, you don't have post-it notes in your exam, so you probably want to use the additional answer space or the back page to record your kind of ideas. Okay, so the mark scheme says that you need to demonstrate a thorough understanding and knowledge of a wide range of considerations in relation to the question. What you put needs to be accurate and detailed. You need to apply your knowledge and understanding directly to the question's context. And any evidence or examples that you give need to be explicitly relevant to the explanation. So you can't waffle, okay? So now with this question, I believe that some of the points that I've made on these post-it notes cover more than one potential issue. So I'm just going to try and be as coherent as possible. Okay, so discuss the positive and negative impacts of this, including ethical, privacy, and legal issues. Okay, so you don't need to do an introductory sentence, by the way, just a waste of time. The centre would be considerate and show empathy for I'm going to use a word that the Americans use here, patrons. That means, you know, people that use your facilities, by putting up clear and informative signage at every entrance to inform the patrons of the upgrades. Okay. Alongside this, they may also want to consider producing a booklet or leaflet explaining why the upgrade is needed and what they will do, or what their policies will be regarding data privacy and protection. Okay, so my first paragraph, apologies for my slightly messy writing, I'm trying to write quickly, otherwise I would take my time and this video would be too long. What I'm doing here is I'm setting the basis for my data protection point, okay? And I think it's quite likely that by mentioning data protection and mentioning it well, I'm going to get at least 2 marks, okay? So a really good way to start your response, in my opinion. Don't need to waffle on about the centre need to think about the pros and cons of the... It doesn't get you any marks, so it's pointless writing it, okay? Okay, so these would go a long way to satisfying the centre's obligations under the Data Protection Act. (2018). As all shoppers, I'm going to call them shoppers now, have the right to be informed that they are not only being recorded, because the question says that this already exists, but of the new intent to also track and identify people. Okay. So what I need to do is now, I think I've made my point. I've used a little bit of evidence to explain why I'm making that point. And now I need to link it to my next point. Whilst it is understandable that shoppers may feel as though they're being watched, / tracked, if the centre can explain and reassure that they are actually tracking much more specific groups of people. So what I mean by that is they're probably not tracking, we have to be careful with this because you don't want to generalize too much, but they're probably not tracking the 65-year-old lady who's taken her grandson out for a nice lunch and to buy a new gift or toy. It's far more likely that they're tracking a group of known troublemakers. Sorry, but I'm going to generalize again and say some teenagers that are wearing Trapstar or Hoodrich hoodies and the ridiculous bags that they tend to wear in front of their chests. Yes, I am judgmental. I don't care. Sue me. Okay, so they're more likely to be tracking much more specific groups of people. Okay. However, the centre will also need to be mindful of why they are tracking specific people. And what I mean by that, of course, is that we don't want to profile people too much. I made a joke a moment ago, but for some people, it's actually really, really, really hurtful that they're perceived to be criminals just because of what they look like. Now, I have myself walked into, I think it was a Poundland shop in Ashford in Kent, and been kind of quite closely watched because I was wearing a hoodie. I didn't have my hood up, but I was wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap. Shock horror. So obviously I deserved to be watched by a very undersized security guard that day. I would have fancied my chances. Okay, so we've run out of space on this page. Let's flip over to the next page. So we've talked about a few of these points, okay? We were just talking about the centre would not want a lawsuit over, for example, racial profiling. So what I mean by this is security guards may have biases that they've inherited in their lives from their parents, grandparents, TV shows that they've watched, things that they've heard, newspapers that they read, etc. If you've got a team of all white-skinned security guards, and one or two of those maybe have some questionable opinions about people of colour, then the centre are going to need to make sure that those people are very clearly aware that you cannot profile people based on something like ethnicity or even gender. Because, again, the ways that people react to these things nowadays are a lot different to the way that I did in Poundland. Some people can laugh it off, some people take it very seriously, and for some people it's actually a really, really big issue because of something that's happened in their life. So although I made a joke about the teenagers in the Trapstar hoodies, I don't wish to offend anybody who genuinely has experienced something which causes them to feel a certain type of way about profiling. Okay, so security guards should be trained, and of course it might not be security guards. There might be someone that's specifically paid and trained to operate this technology. It may be automated, so then you need to think about whether the programmers that wrote the software were diverse and let's say in a reduced state of bias compared to let's say people 30 years ago. So should be trained on the ethics or the ethical issues with using this technology. If it is automated, then a diverse team of programmers should have been used or should have been employed to try to minimize, we call this unconscious bias. You're biased, but you're not aware that you're biased, kind of thing, because you're just repeating something that your granddad told you when you were young and you believed it. So try to eliminate or minimize unconscious bias. Okay, so I think we've covered quite a few things there already that would get us probably 3 or 4 marks by now. Okay, what should we say now? Shoppers may feel safer knowing that the centre take safety and security so seriously. We had the incident in Australia a few months ago where a crazy man went on a rampage with a very large bladed knife and appeared to be targeting only women. So I think for a lot of shoppers, knowing that these things now happen in the world, although very isolated, although these things have happened, if shopping centres are taking security that seriously and are able to act more quickly, then shoppers might feel safer. It also might discourage these people from targeting certain shops as well. Okay, the footage, I didn't put this on my post-it notes, could be used to help convict or prosecute criminals. So police, for example, will have people that they're monitoring. If the CCTV can help police in identifying and prosecuting people, that'll be also really, really useful. But shoppers will also need to know what happens to the data long term. Okay, so, is it saved? Is it deleted after a period of time? Etc., etc. I'm just going to put brackets DPA 2018 again. Okay, so we've run out of space on our normal answer, so I'm going to flip over to the additional answer space. Some would say, or some would argue, that, I'm going to put in quotes, if you are doing nothing wrong, then you have nothing to fear. But this is a slightly one-sided argument, because obviously some people do feel slightly fearful of technology. Think perhaps about the older generation who didn't grow up with technology being omnipresent and pervasive in their lives. So it's important, but it is still important to consider them.